Hello, everyone. So we continue on WFS Live on day 3. And once again, a little plug for our social channels at WF Summit on Twitter, at World Football Summit on Instagram. Please do share about what's going on this week and use the hashtag WFS Live. And whilst you're on this WFS platform, have a look at the expo area as well. We've got some fantastic exhibitors and they are deserving of just at least a couple of moments of your time. So go and check out what they are all about. Now, we've mentioned how every single sector of our industry has been impacted by COVID-19. But what is the picture in the legal world, I wonder? Well, they too have had to react, adapt, reevaluate, but questions still remain as to how to deal with the financial impacts and the legal issues caused by the pandemic. And again, the decisions taken now will shape things going forward for the future. So how has the global sports legal community responded to properly put safety first, to maybe anticipate such crises in the future, to have a plan if any similar situations may arise? We already know that with this coronavirus, it's not just as simple as maybe just finding a vaccine. That will absolutely help. But well, viruses mutate, and we always have to be alive and alert to what is going on. How can their actions help us ensure the health of players, personnel, and fans, their safety and security, and also it's important to say protect the overall integrity of our competitions as well. Let's get into this topic and to welcome our power-packed panel representing some of the biggest organizations in football. And here they are. Senior Legal Counsel at FIFPro, Alexandra Gomez Braunevelt, Chief Legal and Compliance Officer at FIFA, Emilio Garcia, Acting General Counsel and Legal Director at the AFC, Andrew Mercer, Attorney at Law and Arbitrator at CAS, that's of course the highest appeal court in the world, Benoit Pasquier, and moderating this session for us, a Senior Associate at Senferrero Asociados, Sports and Entertainment, Ignacio Triguero. Ignacio, bienvenido, good to see you, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate your introduction, and I'm sure we will have a fascinating session today. Since we do not have much time, I think we shall move on the different topics that I would like to touch upon today. I would like to first also welcome all the attendees to this World Football Summit, to this session and our roundtable, Global Legal Implications in a Post-Pandemic Industry. And I would like also to welcome all my colleagues and participants, Alexandra, Emilio, Benoit, Andrew. All of them are outstanding lawyers with an impressive background and experience in a myriad of top management positions within the legal sports sectors. So today I think we are very lucky to have them all and to share their different perspective from football governing bodies, FIFA and AFC, the global representative for football professional players, FIFPro, and also the insights from the private practice from Benoit that has set his own law firm in Zurich in May this year. And he is also a renewed CAS arbitrator. So without further ado, I would like to start by touching upon the first topic for all participants. So we know that COVID-19 has had a significant impact in football and the world of sport, as many other sectors, and we are currently living an unprecedented situation, I would say since February, March, that has financially impacted clubs, has affected competitions organized all around the world, players and club relationships, and there is a very difficult situation despite that this recent announcement for vaccines in early next year. So I think this situation will continue to affect our sector in at least the next couple of years, I would say. I hope it's less, but we have to be prepared for the situation. So first of all, I would like to start with you all, considering now that we have some experience about with this COVID-19 situation since February, March. I would like to ask first if you consider that from a legal and regulatory perspective, were all these football governing bodies and main actors involved prepared to face such an unprecedented situation from a global perspective. I don't know if we can maybe start with Emilio and Andrew, and then we continue with Alexandra and Benoit.
Okay. Hola, Nacho. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. Great to be with all of you today. So, well, I think that the obviously COVID-19 has a big impact in football, but also in the regulatory aspects of football. So if I tell you the truth, in the beginning, when this pandemic started, so February, March, I asked myself, well, this is a problem, but the impact on the legal aspects of football will be limited. But, suddenly in 1 or 2 weeks, we all realize, look, this is a big and serious storm. We need to do something in order to help clubs, in order to help leagues, in order to help MAs. And that's why the FIFA Council decided to set up a working group in cooperation with the main actors, with FIPRO, with the leagues, with the clubs, with the confederations. And as you know, we issue some guidelines, some rules in order to help clubs and leagues and MAs all around the world. And of course, maybe Alexandra has a different view or the same view, but we think that, these guidelines, these rules help a lot clubs, players, MAs and confederations all across the world. So, looking back and looking at the situation in March 2020 and now in November, December 2020, I think that the outcome of these measures, of these initiatives, of these decisions taken by FIFA, but of course in full alignment with FIPRO, clubs, leagues and confederations, I think that the outcome has been very positive. Of course, we were unable to fix all problems. That's completely impossible, but at least I think that the football stakeholders provided the main actors with certain solutions in order to solve certain things given the circumstances of the pandemic. No? So all in all, we tend to say that we are happy and comfortable with the outcome, but of course, the impact of COVID-19 will continue, as you have just emphasized, maybe not just for 1 or 2 years, for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and we need to monitor this. The first agreements are there. Again, we are positive, but we should continue monitoring the impact and seeing if in 2021 we need to make some extra adjustments into the so-called legal regulatory system. That's my preliminary view on this point, Ignacio. Nacho.
Thank you, Emilio. Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the challenge for sports governing bodies was really intensified because the nature of the pandemic and the pandemic response kind of almost runs contrary to the very basis of the way that the organizations are set up, because the organizations we're built on the principles of solidarity and unity, and obviously the pandemic response was about distance and about retreating, and in a way there's a kind of almost a cultural difference between the sort of ideas of sports governance and the very nature of a pandemic. But actually I think that the response, certainly at the AFC and from the members of the AFC, has been incredibly positive amongst the member associations and the clubs and other stakeholders, and there's been a real drive towards unity. So I think actually what the pandemic has shown is a real great strength amongst the various football stakeholders to brainstorm, strategize, and I think also respectfully disagree, which I think is also a very important part of any process. But I think that the results and the outcomes of this, especially in a regulatory point of view, have been incredibly efficient, and lots of bodies, FIFA included, have been very proactive, which has been incredibly reassuring for the players and I think clubs and other entities. I mean, on an AFC level, of course, the health and well-being of players and supporters was always right at the beginning, the priority, and the safe return to action. So yes, of course, in the context of us, for example, trying to get and successfully getting our Champions League back on in Qatar quite recently, ongoing at the moment, there's been a tremendous amount of work on the regulatory side to put together protocols to amend competition regulations in key areas, to look at the requirements of hosting the matches, and I think on other levels as well, such as in a disciplinary area, to really work to, I think, make the process easier for everybody involved and to focus on the key areas.
Thank you, Andrew. Before giving the floor to Alexandra and Benoit, I think it's because also from FIFA point of view, have you, Alexandra, and your colleagues have been very involved in all the conversations and regulatory updates from FIFA and all the governing bodies. I would like to jump quickly also in how this pandemic has affected the relationship, the employment relationship between football players and clubs from a legal point of view, because we have seen now the consequences of the COVID. For example, here in Spain, we had some problems with the length of the contracts, with the cut on the salaries. So what will be, in your opinion, and also Benoit, I want your insights of this also topic that has been affected, these employment relationships.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for hosting us here. Well, regarding the initial question, I tend to share the views of Emilio and Andrew. I think that it was a very difficult situation to face and to act upon, and I think that in general terms, the right steps were taken. Of course, we also welcome very much the involvement of all stakeholders in the decision making of FIFA. We think it was a very smart move from FIFA. We think it's the way to go, and also it's a very good example for all the federations to see how FIFA is solving these issues, listening to the parties involved, listening to the people that are being actually affected by these regulations, and these are the stakeholders. And I think it was essential for us when we were facing afterwards, of course, some problems, because there were problems naturally, to say, like, listen, FIFA, why don't you just imitate how FIFA dealt with this? They called all the stakeholders together and they checked what their views were. And I think that is absolutely essential. So, as I said, this was not, unfortunately, reproduced everywhere by every football federation, but I think that more or less the bigger problems were more or less solved. Also at the FIFA DRC, all the COVID-19 related cases, I think, have had a reasonable solution. Some are more difficult to decide on than others, because some are clearer than others. But the line is very clear on the fact that there should be negotiation, like everything that was stated in the guidelines is being followed. The club cannot just unilaterally alterate the contracts of the players. Of course, you need the consent of both parties, and that has been a clear line in the DRC. Then, of course, what happens at national level is more complex. It will be more varied, but I think it was a very good start. Sometimes when we faced some problems, we had the issue that the reaction maybe was a little bit slow from the different bodies, but I think that more or less we're going in the right direction. And regarding your question, how the contracts were affected, the labor contracts, as I said, right, the clubs were not and are not entitled to unilaterally modify the content of the contracts, and this is regarding the salary, and this is also regarding the term of the contract or any other part of the contract, because a contract is bilateral. Especially, we cannot forget at any point when we're dealing with these matters that we're talking about labor contracts. Even in countries where this is not recognized, if we look at the nature of these contracts and we analyze what is happening, it's labor. So defined or not, it's still labor relationship. And if it's a labor contract, we need to look at labor law and the labor principles. And I think that if we follow those steps, everything is less difficult and easier, let's say, to understand.
Thank you, Alexandra. Benoit?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I concur with Alexandra when it comes to contract between players and clubs. If I have a client comes to me with a player, I always would tell him, look, we need first to have a look at your contract. And obviously, we are all on the same boat in this exceptional situation. So we need to find the best solution for everyone. So indeed, some clubs might request reduction of salary. But on the other hand, the player who is maybe earning a few millions a month or a year should also take into consideration that he shouldn't be putting the club at risk. So here we need to really find the best outcome for everyone, for the clubs, for the federations, because also the federations are at stake here because they have to also organize football in their respective country, and obviously they have to follow FIFA regulatory framework. So it's a new way for private parties, I have to say, to look at things, to try to improve the interpretation of contracts or the drafting of contracts, and trying to find the best way out of this situation or future similar situations. So I've seen also in my position as a CAS arbitrator that cases are increasing now in contractual dispute. Since May, I have been appointed in more than 10 cases by parties or as president of a panel. And I can see that it's slowly now coming that clubs or players are appealing to CAS decisions that are not in their favor. So we need to look at this exceptional circumstances with professional eyes and trying to find the best solution for everyone, because here we are all on the same boat.
Benoit, brilliant. Thank you very much. I will take advantage of your intervention. Can you quickly share with us your experience with remote hearings at the Court of Arbitration for Sport? Some tips, some recommendations?
Yes, maybe first on a logistical perspective is to have a good internet connection. I have experienced in two hearings where all the attorneys had the perfect internet connection, and then obviously if their client was not directly with them, but in another country, and suddenly the client disappeared, and obviously the panel and the arbitrators couldn't ask him questions, so you had to have a break. So you lose a little bit the flow of the hearing, because the hearing should have a constant flow where actually you can hear parties, can ask them questions, and so on. So when someone important part of the hearing, especially an appealing party, disappear from the screen, or you can't hear him properly, then here there's an issue. So it's always good to just check your internet connection.
Thank you very much, Benoit. I would like to jump also into a very hot topic now, that it's concerning the release of players with the national teams. We have seen that FIFA has updated the regulations for the release of players. And we see also that some of them are coming back and resuming duties with their clubs after a period with the national team, and they are affected by COVID in these travels. Sometimes the travels are not in the best conditions. We have seen the example of Gabon and Aubameyang. So I would like to ask you if you consider that these safety protocols implemented by governing bodies are enough, if there are also a certain part of responsibility also on the conduct of players when going on national duties. We have seen the example of Luis Suarez with Uruguay drinking mate with other colleagues from the national team. So can you share with us also your view on this?
Okay, maybe I can start. Look, Nacho, I think that it's a difficult question, obviously, because there are a lot of individuals and groups involved. So first, we are responsible, the AFC, FIFA, or UEFA, the confederations, we are responsible for putting in place an appropriate legal framework. And I think that this is what we are doing. But then it's also a question of personal responsibility. Of course, the federations, they play an important role, but also the individuals, the players, all of us play an important role, and we all need to be aware of the consequences. So it's easy to say, look, Mr. A is responsible, or the company C or the association C is responsible for this. So it's not too easy. Again, I think that is, we are, as Benoit has just highlighted, it's a common interest, a common goal. So in a complex problem. So again, I don't like to be super positive every time that I speak, even though I'm positive by nature. But looking at the current circumstances, taking into consideration the whole pandemic, I think that football should be eager, to say, I'm happy to say that the competitions continue, and the impact of COVID-19 on health, particularly on players, coaches, and football managers, is limited. No, so of course we need to be cautious, and all of us, including players as well, but also the institutions, we need to be aware of the risks. But again, I think that if you put everything, on the same pot, and you see this as an objective observer, I think that the conclusion should be positive. Having said that, of course, we cannot disregard the risks, and we need to continue working all together. And I think that the cooperation in this area has been also fantastic, with the player unions, with FIPRO, but also with the confederations. There are some risks ahead of us for 2021, the next windows. But I would say that, over the last 6-7 months, we have identified just a few examples, and on average, the outcome is, again, in my opinion, positive.
Alexandra, maybe.
Yes. Well, it's a very tricky matter. I think that there are different aspects. One of the things that in FIFPro we are very concerned about is the amount of matches that the players are playing nowadays, and this is, of course, has to do with the question, because on top of the extra matches that the players are playing in their clubs, they are called on international duty, and this is putting a risk in the health of the players. Last year, before the pandemic, we had made a very in-depth research, and we published a report called At the Limit. And in that report, it already showed that this high-profile, I'm talking about high-profile players who also play normally in their national team, were really, really, really pushed to the limits, putting their health at risk, and in the end, also putting the clubs at risk, because these players will be and are injured more than what is normal. And this is pre-pandemic. So imagine now that everything is compressed. This is a very tricky situation. That is why we think that international duty now has to be, in the reserve bench, let's say. We need to focus now on the club duty. This is the job of the players, and this is already being really tricky for the players to comply with, because, as I said, it's extremely compressed. If we add to this international duty at this stage, it's very complicated. Of course, we understand it's very easy to say, and then, okay, how do you plan on the international calendar? Absolutely agree, very difficult, and that is why it's so important to have FIFPro involved in the international match calendar negotiations and talks. It is a direct impact on the players, and therefore it's so important. Then, regarding specifically the cases in which the players got the virus, one of the things is, if players are being pushed as they are now to work so much, especially physically, their defenses will go down, and then it's also easier for them to get the virus. And you actually see it a lot. I mean, I am very impressed every day when I look at the news, and there are so many football players with the virus, and many times it's not really active, but that they do carry it. On top of that, the emotional stress that the players have been going through, the mental illnesses that have developed, the amount of players with depression and other kinds of mental health issues in a very uncertain period. And this is, of course, not only for football players, it's for everyone. But a football player that is used to being outside and playing with their teammates and celebrating a goal, hugging each other, are now completely under the magnifying glass, not being allowed to do many of the things that they did all the time, and having been in many cases for months and not able to be even outside and train with their teammates. So it's very tricky. Regardless of that, of course, there's a responsibility of the players, and we support that, and we share all the information, and we keep on trying to keep players informed of what they have to do and the precautions to take and everything, because as professionals, of course, they also have to follow the protocols and be alert, and yeah, that for sure. But I think that not in every case the protocols are being followed also by the national associations and by clubs, etc., etc. Also, in some cases, these protocols have not been negotiated with the players' union, and they maybe don't match the guidelines of FIFA and what we also from FIFPro deem should be necessary. So there are many things to improve here. I welcome the fact that there are protocols in place in many places, but we still need to look at them. We still need to implement them in the right way. We hear from multiple places that there's a protocol which says that there will be tests every week, and they have not had one test in 1 month or things like that. So yeah, something to really follow and try to make sure that it's complied with in the best possible way, to allow everyone actually to be in a better position, players to play, and clubs to be able to compete, of course.
Thank you, Alexandra. Since we are running a little bit short of time, I would like to do a last round with you all, where you can maybe share with us your different perspectives about this first month since the pandemic, and what were the measures that were implemented to tackle the effects of the pandemic, and also with a look into the future, what are the measures that need to be adopted by FIFA, by AFC, what can do FIFPro, what can do also law firms from the private sector. We have seen that, for example, FIFA and Emilio's team has been very, very active and very responsive in the last times with the updates on the RSTP, the guidance on COVID-19, football regulatory issues, the new rules for this release of players. So they have been very, very active. Without also not forgetting about the long-term strategy that FIFA wanted, also with this recent announcement of coaches being also including the RSTP with the future reform of intermediaries. So what are, if you can briefly explain these measures that you have adopted or that you have contributed with of your organizations, and also what are your advice for the future? What can we do to tackle this problem that will not terminate soon, I guess? So we can start maybe with Emilio.
Thanks, Nacho. I think that we need a dedicated World Football Summit, no, to tackle all the initiatives that we all together put in place in 2020. So what I can say, and what I have to say, because I feel this, is I would like to thank all the football stakeholders for the contribution, MAs, confederations, FIFPro, ECA. So this is something that we have achieved thanks to the mutual collaboration and being all aligned with the main measures. Of course, from time to time we disagree. That's part of the process. But in the end, we are all happy with the outcome. So what I would like to ask to the next year, 2021, now that we are very close to Christmas, Santa Claus, Papa Noel, Père Noël, etc., 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 is to see an amazing 2021. So the football is back. So players are in good shape, healthy, to see the Euro 2020/2021 being played all across Europe. Copa America, lovely Copa America, common ball with the most amazing players in the world between Colombia and Argentina. So the UEFA Champions League, AFC competitions. So that's the most important thing for me, to see 2021 with a strong football. And of course, with all players, coaches, and managers in good shape, and hope that with these vaccines or systems, finally we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Not for football, just because we are human beings, and there are a lot of individuals suffering all around the world and dying, unfortunately. But again, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and we can we can go back to normal, but to the real normal, not to the actual and current normal, so to a real normal. So football should be back, and love to see, looking forward to seeing supporters and managers and players playing in amazing football competitions. This is what I ask for the next year.
Thank you, Emilio. Alexandra, Andrew, quickly, because we are running short of time.
Okay, very quickly.
Sure.
I will limit it. One is transparency, and the other one is collective bargaining.
Yeah, I think the challenge is to ensure that the opportunities are not lost. So if we have a situation where, for example, we get the vaccine and football returns to something approaching normal, we still shouldn't forget about the issues, for example, on player welfare that existed before the pandemic. We don't just take this, the optimism of a vaccine as moving on from those issues. We shouldn't forget about the previous financial issues that many said were problematic in football, simply because we might be able to get back to something that's approaching normal. So I think that we still need to consider the pandemic and our response in the global context of the challenges that sport was already facing and football was already facing.
Thank you, Benoit, for terminating this interesting panel.
Yes, on a more private practice perspective, just to keep updated with the new development and the new regulations issued by FIFA and the different governing bodies in the world, and just try to provide the best advice to its clients.
Thank you very much, Benoit. And thank you, David. I back the request of Emilio. Next time we shall have one day dedicated to legal matters in the next edition of the World Football Summit. Thank you very much to all participants and all attendees.
I'll back that. I'll send a WhatsApp to the boss. See what he says. Listen, thank you very much indeed, guys. Ignacio, you navigated that very tricky conversation, admittedly, with lots of concepts that people need to get up to speed with very superbly. I thought great to get different points of view, obviously from different stakeholders in the game, from the world governing body for football, confederation, FIFA Pro represented the players' point of view from CAS as well. It shows how complex the situation really is, doesn't it? And thank you for speaking so candidly on topics that are delicate, really. I thought, we've had some great female voices throughout this week. And Alexandra, I'm going to add you to that list. I think, you spoke very, very well on the perils for players right now, regardless of coronavirus, with this congested calendar that we've got. Interesting notion, the international duty is on the reserves bench. It's, I wonder how people will react to that. I think it's an interesting notion. And the other elements need to be considered: mental health, emotional stress, and a greater call for sort of consistency and clarity, really. We've got different priorities, different stakeholders. They don't always align. So I guess to be collaborative, to communicate well, to be understanding is the key to getting through this. So thank you so much, guys. Really, really do appreciate your thoughts and your insights today with us here at WFS Live. Right, we'll be back very, very soon with a change of tack and a change of direction as we talk partnerships and sponsorships. See you very shortly.